live. Maybe we're live. We'll give this 1 second for it to catch up so I can see if it's actually playing or not. And if I fixed my mic issues, which weren't actually issues as it turns out. I'm just an idiot. I'm on a roll with that tonight, by the way. I updated the program that I use. Yep, there we go. Mute. 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 I updated the program that I used to do the live streams, and it moved something, and it just, yeah, I got confused. So, let's go ahead and get started. I am working finally with the Caran watercolor pencils. These are the Museum, oh yes, hit record, thank you guys. Aquarelle, I don't know how to say it. They're pretty nice. They don't give you, I'm finding at least so far, and I'll do a full comparison with these in the Derwent, I don't get as much of a watercolor look. So that I'm really interested to do a side-by-side comparison of the same project with them and see. I'm happy with the results I'm getting, but it's definitely not that watercolor feel that I felt that I was getting from Derwent, and I like the watercolor feel, so I'm really excited to, once I finish this, do a side-by-side, see which one. And I don't even think it's going to be necessarily one's absolutely better than the other. I have a feeling it's going to depend on what you're trying to accomplish with the looks. And then, of course, the light fastness of these is much better. So that's a big bonus. Let me know if the camera starts to sync. I'm having problems again with the mic stand. This is the new one, and it doesn't tighten enough. Or I'm not getting it tight enough, and it keeps wanting to droop. So exciting times. So, okay, let's see. Hit record. Yes, I did. Thank you, Joseph. And I think we are good to go. Okay, so I'm working on the anemone right now. This is actually one of our reference photos from Patreon from March, although I usually don't update them till the middle of the month, so this is like last half of March, first half of April reference photo. So that, if you want to see what that is, that's what I think I have it posted over on Facebook. And what I'm doing now is just working on the anemone. And let's see, where did I leave off last night? I was working on this. I was having so much fun. I have to say, these are very, very enjoyable to work with. I was having so much fun playing with these that at 4 in the morning, I so did not want to go to bed. I just wanted to keep staying up and playing. So that's a good sign that I really want to keep working with them. So far, everything that I've tried with them, I liked pretty well. The white pencil shows up pretty nicely. Everything blends really smooth. That is one thing. I felt like the Derwent gave you more of that watercolor type blend, or what I would traditionally think of as watercolor, whereas these are, I don't know, these feel almost more like gouache to me. So let's see. There we go. And let's go. Okay, where do I want to start? I guess back on this guy. So I'm going to have to order more of these pencils. You know, one of the reviews that I read with these said that they only had the number on the end of the pencil. It's actually not true if you turn it over. Maybe they changed it. Maybe they didn't used to have that, but the name is actually really clearly written there. I thought that was going to be an issue with these because I had read reviews saying they didn't have a name printed. I'm not sure if, again, they could have changed it or that artist just didn't turn the pencil over. I didn't catch it right away myself until last night. I was working with them. I was like, hey, these actually are pretty good. Let's see. We're going to have you would come out here. Redrawing in. I changed my anemone, the tentacle guy's alarms, a little bit from what my reference photo was. I basically mushed this half of the anemone and the very back half together because I had this weird spot in the middle that just didn't look right in mine for the layout. So I'm having to redraw a few things here and there. Luckily, none of this really needs to be super precise. I mean, they move and flow with the water. So if they're not in the same position, no big deal. Kitsy said, do these blend out better than Derwent? The ivory black and gunmetal gray from Derwent are always dry, awful, no matter how much I layer. I'm not sure what you're talking about with that. I've not had a problem with those drying badly, but, I mean, well, they were doing what I wanted them to, so I guess it depends on what your goals are there. Blending out, yeah, I feel like I'm getting a smoother look, a more opaque. They definitely seem more opaque than a lot of the Derwent pencils did. Move this over a little. Than some of the Derwent pencils did. And I don't know if I think that's a good or a bad thing. It's just a different thing. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to be a little bit biased towards the Derwent because I enjoyed working with them so much. I think because I wasn't expecting much. I went into it thinking I wasn't going to like them very much. So once I got started and realized, wow, these are pretty awesome. it's hard for me to use something that's at all different and like it as much, I think. So there's that, just that bias when going into these, knowing how much I loved those. Now, they're good, but they're, like, in through a lot of this, the opacity is very different than what I saw with the Durant. And again, until I do a side-by-side where I'm doing the same project, I can't say for certain. One project with the medium is not enough to give, I think, a full review. I think unless you're really comparing, you've got to do a few projects before you can really give too much of your opinion on something. I can definitely, like Powder Blender, the first review I did of that, I look back and go, this was a terrible review because I didn't know enough about it. I mean, it was an introduction to the medium, but until I did a few projects, I didn't feel like I could really compare them well with other things. Now that I've worked with them so many times, I can compare them better. And I feel the same with these, where I need to do a few more projects with both before I'll be able to say for certain which I prefer as far as performance. I know I like these better for light fast reasons. These are crazy expensive though in comparison. The good news is, and this is one thing that I'm pretty happy about, like with colored pencils, I'm way more picky. Now, part of that is I've done hundreds of pieces of, hundreds of colored pencil artworks over the years. So I've got a lot to compare to. Like anything's a little bit different from one pencil to the next, I'm going to notice. Whereas this is my second watercolor project. I mean, if you don't count the Smart Art Box, the quick little giraffe, but I don't feel like I have the experience yet to give you as much of an opinion as I will. Let me do like 3, 4, 5, and I'll give you a much better review. But what I'm thinking, and this may definitely change the more I work with them, what I'm thinking right now, I kind of preferred performance. I liked a lot about the Derwent ones, and part just I wasn't expecting to, so, there's that. But these feel more like gouache to me, if that makes sense, if you've used gouache before. It's a little bit more opaque, a little bit thicker is not necessarily the right word. I'm trying to think of how to best describe them. But yeah, I'm excited to try a side-by-side comparison and get a good idea. But, anyway, the point is, the good thing is I have a feeling that no matter, even when I decide which one I prefer, I think I'm still going to recommend both. So if somebody is like, I want to get started with watercolor pencils, but I don't want to spend a ton of money, then the Derwent, I think, is going to be a good way to go, because I was very happy with the performance of those. Not for selling because of the archival issues or lightfast issues, but I like the idea that there's a cheap pencil or a less expensive pencil than the other things out there, because with colored pencil, that's a little bit harder to find something for somebody who's, just wanting to test it out. It's harder to find a good pencil that's going to perform well. And I think that the Derwent watercolor pencils, if you're not worrying about the lightfast, they performed very, very well. So I'm kind of excited about that there would be either way. I'm definitely still going to recommend trying those. Even if I end up liking these better the more I use them. But I really don't know just yet which will be my favorite. But these are nice. They're buttery is almost a way to describe them. Although there are a couple of pencils. Is it this one? There's a couple in here. I think it's this one. My rogue or purplish red. God, it sounds like something I would name a color. Those of you on Patreon know what I'm talking about. I'm always making up color names. But this one is, I think it was this one, so scratchy. It works, but oh my God, hardly any color wants to come out. The lead, it's weird. Like, almost to the point where I'm thinking, is this defective? That's kind of an issue. I think when you have pencils that you're charging as much as Derwent does, or not Derwent, as much as Caran does, I don't think you get away with having some colors that are just crappy. That is definitely a downside, I think, or kind of a vote against them on that. I would say Derwent at their price point, if they've got 1 or 2 colors that are kind of on the crappy side, all right. These are like, I don't know, $4 a piece, $5. Too much money for having any pencil that's scratchy like that. So that is definitely one thing that I wasn't super impressed with, or I haven't been. I love the color, and so I'm using it. I need the color a lot for this, but hardly any pigment comes out of the pencil. It's like hard as a freaking rock. So that I was definitely not impressed with. I didn't find that with the Derwent colors, or at least the ones now. Okay, I didn't use every color, so that's a possibility that maybe they do have some that are like that. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. Let's see. Phyllis said, I was in Hobby Lobby today and saw Derwent metallic water-based pencils. Have you tried them, or has anyone else? I have not yet. I need to, though. Maria asked which pencils I'm using tonight. These are the Caran Museum Aqua something I can't pronounce watercolor pencils. Karen said, how much will you be able to finish tonight? An entire underpainting? Will you use the watercolor pencils over this? Will you use these are, huh? I think I'm reading that wrong. How much will you be able to finish tonight? That question, well, to give you an idea, this entire bottom corner, this is a 14 by 20, 14 by 18, I don't know, a big piece of paper. I finished basically half of it last night in maybe 3 hours. Tonight, I'm going to probably get a little section of the anemone done. I don't think I'll get that far because, as I'm doing right now, I stop and talk and I stop working. But I don't think I'll get too terribly far on this tonight. Once the live stream is over, I'll go back and work more. And then I'll probably get a lot more done. I work very, very fast when I'm focused on what I'm doing. But as for, will you use the watercolor pencils over this? These are all watercolor pencils, so I don't think I'm reading that right. I'm not understanding the question. I'm sorry. Oops, scrolled too far. Where did that go? How many times do I say a night, scrolled too far? It's so frustrating. Salen said, do you like the Derwent watercolor better than the Inktense pencils? They're different. I don't think I have necessarily a preference. There's things that I like about both. And so I don't see myself ever giving up, just using one or the other. Now that I've used the watercolor, I think that that's just going to be an additional medium that I work in. Because the watercolor, it's easier, at least with the Derwent ones, I had an easier time of, losing my spot here, of getting that loose watercolor feel, because it will reactivate, the color will kind of lift and blend in. I could get that looser feel easier with the Derwent watercolor pencils than with the Inktense. With the Inktense, I like them because I can have, the way that I layer is very similar to how I would layer with acrylics, and I can get really crisp, just the way that I work. Not that you can't do that with the watercolor. I don't know. They're just a little bit different. I'm going to do another video too, comparing watercolor pencils versus Inktense, or Derwent watercolor pencils versus Inktense. I have so many comparison videos I'm so excited to do, because these, I don't know, these are all questions that I had, and I figure if it's a question I had when I got, yeah, this is the scratchy one. I don't recommend purplish red, by the way. It's a pretty color, but it works. It's just scratchy, and like not that much comes off the pencil. Anyway, I guess that means it'll last forever. But yeah, I've got a lot of, I'm going to do a Derwent versus Caran watercolor. Where's the other? Oh, it's in my hand. Derwent versus Caran watercolor pencils, and then I'm going to do a Derwent watercolor versus Inktense, so we can really, I'll do the same project twice using each medium, so you can really see the difference. They're similar, and I think that's probably why I ended up right away, like after my first project, liking the watercolor pencil so much, because it is so similar to working in Inktense. Like, there's not a huge difference. Okay, I think I'm just going to go ahead and blend this, and then we'll dry that. We'll be using the hairdryer a lot tonight. I would apologize to my neighbors, but I have to listen to their dog bark pretty much nonstop, so I don't feel too bad about them having to listen to a hairdryer on occasion. Does that make me a jerk? Okay. I probably should have put way more orange on this one. This is one of the things that I love. I should have put too much, or put more orange. I forgot that I wasn't done putting pencil on there before I blend it out with water. It really doesn't matter. I will end up blending or layering some orange on top, and it'll mix because it'll reactivate with that yellow. It'll mix together really nicely. Now, one thing that I found, I have a harder time having to make sure I time things right. See how you can blend really smoothly, but I have to really watch that, because this doesn't seem, at least from what I remember, it doesn't seem like it reactivates quite as well as the Derwent watercolor pencils. And for some people, that's a good thing. Some, that's a bad thing. It just depends on what you want it to do. I have to be careful. That blue is really bold. Yeah, that is way more bold than what I wanted right there. What I will, and actually I can lift some of it, but I'll end up going over it with a white watercolor pencil and toning it down. So let's just pull some into this guy. That soften out nicely. And you can see it blends, it does blend nice as long as you're working wet into wet. I just find that it doesn't reactivate that well, but because they tend to be a little bit more opaque, you can cover stuff and rework stuff that came out bad. Like this whole section down here, it was bad. It was like concerningly bad while I was first doing it. And I was thinking, oh, I don't like these at all. Once I layered enough, I ended up loving it. But I mean, it came out how I wanted it to. But it took a lot more layers than the Derwent did. So that was like the pigment wasn't quite as bold to start with. Okay, plug your ears. Here comes the hairdryer. Actually, here, I'll mute you. Okay. Let's see. Elena said, why don't art supply stores sell pre-stretched watercolor paper? I have no idea. There's probably a reason, and I don't have a clue. Katrina asked, what is gouache? It's just another medium. To me, it feels almost like if you combined Inktense and acrylic paints. Like, it's thinner than acrylics. It dries matte, or it should. Photographs beautifully. So, like, illustrators use, or people who are, like, illustrating books, needed things done quickly, needed to get good photographs. I know they used it a lot. But it's not a medium I've played with it a couple of times, but it's not something I've really ever gotten into much myself. Not for any specific reason. You know, a lot of, I think, what mediums that I've used over the years have come down to, and what brands that I chose to work with, or came down to, at least initially, what was available in stores. I did not have, I mean, well, when I started, the internet wasn't really a thing. You didn't do online shopping when I started with art. But you didn't have any options other than what Michaels carried. And the only art supply store near me was Michaels and sort of Aaron Brothers, but they were always overpriced. The worst now. Well, now they're closing, so it's not as big of a deal, or most of them are. But they're, you just didn't have any options, or not many options. So whatever those stores carried is what I used. So for acrylics, Liquitex was the majority of what they used. And I'm really glad that that is what they use, because now I know Michaels and Hobby Lobby both carry their own generic acrylics. A lot of these companies are starting to carry their own generic products. The problem is their generic products, for the most part, suck. I hate them, like, passionately. Except the paintbrushes. I really do like the generic paintbrushes. But besides that, I'm not a huge fan at all. What line is this? Oh, I've got this lined up in the wrong spot. I'm not a huge fan of their generic things. And I think back when I started, because I was looking for whatever the least expensive materials were, probably would have gotten those. And not been as happy with the name brands. So that's kind of unfortunate. I mean, I guess part of me says, well, it's good if there are lower cost alternatives for artists to get started with. And the other part of me is like, yeah, but they're not really lower cost. That's what Liquitex used to cost. But anyway, a lot of the materials that I used, like Inktense back then wasn't out. They didn't have a lot of, the gouache was not something that Michaels carried that I'm aware of. They didn't carry a lot of stuff. So you had to find specialty places to get a lot of these different things, or to try out different stuff. So that really influenced what mediums that I worked in and which brands that I went with. Winsor & Newton, I used their oil paints because that's what was available at the time. Now I'm just used to them and they're fine. But a lot of the brands that I use were chosen because of that. And I lived before in Southern California, so there were art supply stores in Hollywood and LA I could go into, but they were so out of my price range that wasn't really a good option. The smaller art stores usually charge more. They don't get the same break because they have the mass purchases, or mass purchasing that Michaels has. But anyway, that was a lot of talking to answer what is gouache. Rhonda said, does the brush and pencil blending set work for water-soluble pencils? No. You wouldn't need it. I mean, you use water to blend them with, so no, it won't work. Yeah, let's see. Jason said, or no, DJ said that, wow, that's expensive. Yeah, these are ridiculously. I'm not usually one to not want to use art supplies because they cost too much. Usually, I mean, it's my job, so I have a decent sized budget to buy my art supplies. These pencils make me cringe a little bit. I'm going through them. Not this pencil. This one is the one I'm probably going through the fastest. So let's compare that. Let's see, just for half this painting. Let me compare it with a new one I haven't used yet. So it's not terrible. That's how much of that pencil, this one here, that I've used for half this painting. And it's a color I'm using a lot. I'll need it for the rest of it. But part of me is kind of cringing about that, just because Oh my gosh, this pencil is expensive and I'm going through it so quickly. And I normally don't feel like that with art supplies, but these ones just definitely feel like my luminance colored pencils seem to last really long with these. I'm a little bit hesitant, wondering if they're going to last quite that long. We'll see. But I don't normally do that where I'm like, I need to save it. I need to make it last longer with anything. The only other art supply that kind of makes me, or style that I would work in that makes me cringe a little bit cost-wise because it gets super expensive is painting in oils with a palette knife. You go through paint like crazy with those. So that does kind of bring in that cringe factor for me. Let's see. Oh my gosh, I passed up just so many questions right now. Where did that last one? Okay, Reb said, will you do more projects with pigment markers? I will, actually. I think, did I include one in the email newsletter? I almost did today. I don't think I ended up using that one. But anyway, when I was looking through what old videos I wanted to include in the newsletter, I came across the markers, the pigment markers with the tiger, and it made me really want to do so. So very soon I probably will work with those again. Those are fun. I miss them. I hope they're not all dried out because I haven't used them in a really long time. I mean, they've all got the lid on, so it'll be interesting to see if they last long when not being used. Clarence said, it seems as though these watercolor pencils have a nearly oil paint by the way the purples look. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, they're more matte, obviously, but a little bit the way that a lot of this blended. You can see some of the brush strokes, which I was trying to keep in, but some it just really blends. And I'm sure the more that I use them, the more control I'm going to get. So if I want brush strokes, I'll learn how to get that easier. But I found that looked to be much easier with Derwent than these. Rain said, contact them and they'll replace the pencil. I've had to do that occasionally. I may. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see if I have them replace it, if it comes out being the same. Because I know they had problems before with their luminance. Some of the brown, which brown was that? Earth brown or Castle Earth or something like that. That one was really bad with, a lot of people had complaints with it being scratchy. It didn't affect the piece, so it didn't bother me on that one anyway. But I do know a lot of people had problems with some of those colors before, and they said that they knew why it was happening, but they thought they'd replaced all of them. So it'll be interesting to see what they say. Katrina wants to know how I like the Inktense blocks. I love them. A lot. Like a lot. Lee Fiddler says, are you using your usual Fabriano watercolor paper? I am, and I kind of hate it. The more, this does not hold its shape. So this is the one, the only reason I use this paper again, because I have some arches, and I think that I'm going to prefer that. But at least from the watercolor block I used, of course it was a small block, so we'll see once I try a big project. But I tried, or I wanted to go with the same paper that I used for the lionfish so that I could get a better idea or kind of compare these pencils a little bit more. But it is a watercolor block. I looked at it. It was supposed to be a block, but it fell apart. Like completely did not hold the edges, so it's just in pieces. So I can't use it in the block form. And I don't know if that's part of why it warps as bad as it does, but it's a little bit frustrating. I'm going to order the arches, they're watercolor blocks. I really want to get the hot press, the big, like 16 by 20 or around that size. So I will probably be picking some of that up soon because I really liked it. At least I liked it for the water-soluble graphite. Let's go ahead and blend that guy out. I'm using my Derwent, the water brush. I love this for the smaller areas. It's like the perfect bristle, like thickness or stiffness or however you want to call it. I'm liking it enough. I need to contact Derwent and have them send me more because the more I use these water brushes, the more I love them. I still use, like for the bigger areas, I use my regular paint brushes in water, but for these smaller areas, I'm loving working with this. Yeah, one of the things when I first started with this last night, I was trying so hard not to, I was worried that the pigment would be too strong. My friend warned me that it has really strong pigmentation. She's like, use a really light hand, be real careful, it gets super dark. No, not compared to Derwent anyway. I found the Derwent pigmentation to be a bit At least from what I remember. Maybe it was just the color I was using. I don't know. But these seem very, very pale. They build up to dark. And the nice thing is because I mean, I guess that's good that they don't reactivate as much as the Derwents seem to. They do, that's a bigger area. I need to switch to a bigger brush. They do, because they're not reactivating as much, they seem to layer really well. So I wasn't having a hard time making mud in any area. It was a little bit closer to Inktense there, because Inktense is permanent. It's not going to lift at all. So you can layer on top of layer without reactivating the previous layer. With these, it activates still because of them being watercolor, but not as much as the Derwents seem to. But I guess that's necessary considering how many layers I have to put to get the color pigment as dark as I want. I think it's a little bit easier to, that didn't come out right at all. It's a bit easier to control, so that's a good thing. Let's see. Art Bun said, do you think you will do projects in the future that combine watercolor pencils with colored pencil? Yes, I love that combination. And the lionfish that I did a couple weeks ago, I thought I was going to on that. I was going to use my colored pencils as a backup if I sucked at the watercolor pencils, but I didn't need it. Because you can use this as an underpainting and put the colored pencils on top. But I find that these are suitable all on their own. You don't really need the colored pencil to correct things much. I didn't have a hard time controlling the watercolor pencils. Caran said, I meant for detail, will you still be using the same pencils layered over these? Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yes, I will. My plan is just to use these pencils alone so that this is a 100% this brand of watercolor pencil for this one. Esme asked if it was just her or the personal cam was foggy. It's the lights. Unfortunately, the light is like this far away from the camera, and these lights really wash out cameras bad. So I apologize for that. I've got to find a better way. I don't know if there is a better way for the way I've got this set up. Okay. Whoops. Gail wants to know, said, like me, she hates the feel of pastels in her hands, but loves the look. Is there such an animal as pastel pencils? Absolutely. I've actually used them with the Smart Art boxes. I've used pastel pencils quite a bit. I still end up with them on my hands, so they're still not for me. But there are pastel pencils that a lot of people absolutely love. Through what is the best water brush? I've got Derwent, and I've got some that were generic ones that I got from Smart Art Box. Honestly, they've all been fine, but I use the Derwent ones. They're the main ones that I've been using because I have more of those. I'm not sure where my generic ones went. I guess I wasn't excited enough about them to pay attention to where I stored them. So I'm not sure there, but I know that I do love, love, love the Derwent ones. Sarah Makes Art said, for the Smart Art Box, I tried acrylic gouache, which is different from regular gouache. Yeah, but I've used other gouache before, like regular. Do I have any tips on photography? Why is that not coming out right? Getting photos of paintings. Wow. Photographing. That's not a word. Photographing. That doesn't sound right to me for some reason. So we'll go with taking pictures of paintings. Yes, you want to make sure that your lighting is at a 45-degree angle to the artwork. You want your camera at a 90-degree angle. Lights from the side. Do not have lights coming straight in front of it because you will have horrible glare and it's going to be a terrible mess. But, oh, hold on. Let me dry this before it dries as warped as I think it's already going to. Hold on. Okay. But yeah, I like taking photos. I get the best photos if it's an overcast day, not dark, like cloudy, dark cloud, storm cloud dark, but an overcast day. I tend to get the best lighting for my photos, usually. And I take them indoors. I've got a lot of light in my dining room and living room area, and so that's usually where I take photos. I've tried taking them outdoors. It tends to, well, every time I try it, it's just a bit too bright. You'd have to have a little bit darker day for that. But indoors with no direct sunlight, but the cloudy or kind of indirect sun that way seems to work really well for me. So I'm going to brighten this orange up a bit. Now, ideally, you would put, like, I'm already running my hand across this. Ideally, when you work, you do want to have glassine or something under your hand so that the oils of your hand aren't touching it. My hands are clean, so, I mean, I've got that going for me. But even so, if it's something that you are going to sell and really be concerned about, I would definitely put something under your hand. Or you can hold your hand back so that it's not touching like I'm doing here. You can go any direction. I didn't have any problems. Like if I'm scribbling this direction and then this direction, if you do that with colored pencil and you blend with OMS, you're going to see those lines. If you do that here with these, with any, and the same with the Derwent, if you do it with the watercolor pencils, you really don't see it. And I'm not pushing very hard. You do not need to push hard. Anytime you're using watercolor, I do recommend start light and build to your darker values. Don't jump to super, super dark because it's hard. You can lift the color to an extent, but it's just easier if you let some of the white of the paper show through and just slowly build up to your darker colors as you get going. And there are a few colors that I really do wish came in this set. What is this? Carmine Lake. Let's see what this looks like. Another tip. Have a scratch piece of paper so that you can test and see, because I think that's going to be more red. And a reddish brown. They're a pretty color. Not the color I want at all. I wish I had more of a lavender color in this. Like some of these pink colors that I want, I'm mixing. It's not exactly what I want. There's not a good pink. Like you can thin out red by using a lot of water, but there's not a good pink. I've got peach, but not some of the other colors I really do wish I had. A lot of these colors remind me a lot of the Faber-Castell, no, wow, words hard. The Caran luminance colors where they're a bit more muted, which is good for nature, but sometimes you want something super, like I hyped up the color saturation on this photo a lot. And these are not supernatural colors. And they don't have a lot of the bright fluorescent colors in their set. Maybe because those tend to not be so light fast. That could definitely have something to do with it, but I do wish they had a few more pastel and pink lavender type colors. Jillian said, can I get the same result using Faber-Castell, Albright, their watercolor pencils, I can't say it, to get the effect of OMS of normal pencil? First layer blending with water, last dry for fur. It is possible to make it look the same. It's not the same in the way that you would approach it. It's very different at how they work because those are watercolor pencils. They're permanent, or more permanent than, they don't lift as much as like these or the Derwent wood from what I've read. But I've not tried them, so I can't say for certain. But the results that you get, it is possible to make that look like a colored pencil piece. I mean, I've seen people do watercolor and you would never know it was watercolor. It just looked like a high definition photo. But your approach to it is different. So you're not going to blend in quite the same way, but you can do the same thing where, I mean, you don't have to blend everything out. Like in here, I've got dry pencil that I'm not going to blend out if you mean that. So I've got blended out with water underneath, and then I've got dry pencil on top that I won't touch with water. And there we go. Scrolled too far again. I apologize if I miss your questions. They are... the chat window can be frustrating. Oh my gosh, went way too far. Okay, I think I'm caught up. Here we go. Melody said, can you please tell us where you get your prints made? What paper you use? Do you use matte or glossy? Well, it depends on what it is. The prints that I do, like the postcards for Patreon, I have those done at Vista Print, and I get I think it's 115 pound. It's the heaviest weight and glossy. They look better. I find that they look better, and I want the heaviest weight for those. with my prints, like a print that goes on the wall, those are all through Fine Art America. I don't know what paper they use. I don't touch it. It doesn't ever come in contact with me. It's a print on demand. So when somebody orders, they print it, they ship it, they do everything. So, that I don't know. I don't make prints on my own at home though. That gets really expensive because you've got to have the very expensive printer, expensive paper. Ink costs an arm and a leg. Making prints on your own is extremely expensive. So for me, I never had the money to put into that. I probably could save up and do it now, but before that wasn't even an option for me. So print on demand worked really well. And now I like print on demand just because it saves me so much time. I don't have time at this point to deal with making prints and shipping them because so much work goes into videos and Patreon. But that's what I use. Art Bum said, do you work with as fine of a point with watercolor pencils as you do colored pencils? Good question. And no, I do not. As you can see, very, very dull. Because of the way that the water is going to dissolve the pigment into the paper, I don't need it to be very sharp. The reason that you have to have your pencils really sharp with colored pencil is you need to make sure that the pencil gets into all little nooks and crannies of the paper, the tooth of the paper. Otherwise, the white grain of the paper starts to show through where the pencil didn't quite get, even with odorless mineral spirits. Here, that's not something that you have to worry about. It's going to dissolve completely. So at no point do you really get a super grainy, gritty look. So I don't need a very sharp pencil. And that's one thing that's nice that I think makes them last a little bit longer is that I don't have to have these very sharp as I'm working. So that is definitely on the plus side for these. And you can go through fast. I mean, this is big. This is, again, I want to say it was 14 by 18, 14 by 20, 14 by something, but it's fairly large. To get that much colored pencil, like regular colored pencil, wax or oil-based, on half this would have taken me a week. I mean, that would have taken forever to get this kind of coverage. I got it done in a few hours last night. So that's a big, big bonus for the watercolor pencils, I think. That's another comparison I'm going to do, watercolor pencils versus colored pencil. But these aren't as easy to control, I think, as colored pencil, because when you add water, you know, it can do some crazy stuff. Before I forget, you guys, if you will head over to our moderators tonight, we've got the Art of Joseph Fincham and Valerie Connell of Drawing with Fire. Check out their channels. I've got links in the video description. Subscribe to them as a huge thank you. Plus, they've got awesome content, so you're going to want to subscribe anyway. But thank you guys so much for helping me with this, because I could not do this without them moderating for me. They help a lot. Definitely check out their channels. I always forget till the end to mention that, so we'll do that now. Oksana said, what do you look for when choosing a good quality but on a budget watercolor pencil? This is only the second pencil I've used, but I can say performance-wise and budget-wise, I think Derwent is amazing. I loved their performance. Their pigment was beautiful, really dark pigment. I really like the Derwent watercolor pencils. I've not tried every pencil out there. From the reviews that I've read and what I've looked into, Derwent's probably going to be your best bet as far as balancing quality with budget. But not light fast. Most, like half of the pencils aren't light fast. And once you add water, I have no idea what the light fast ratings would be then. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I wouldn't sell something that I'd use with most of those pencils. So, you know, that you've got to factor that in. Now make prints. Yeah, definitely. The lionfish I painted, I will definitely be making prints of that. I love how it came out. So for me, it's worth it just to get money from the prints and not from the original. So there's that. Actually, that original is going to a friend. Ziddy said, Lisa mentioned one of her numerous videos, but I cannot find it again. What pencil does she use to sketch that do not smudge with watercolor? I'm using my water-soluble pencils by Faber-Castell. It's not that they don't smudge. They actually blend out completely, but I don't end up with a pencil line. If you want your pencil to stay, a regular graphite pencil should work. But with these, I'm using a watercolor or a water-soluble graphite pencil. So at no point will you, once this is all blended out and I have gone over everything, you won't see pencil lines at all. What is a good water brush to use with your watercolor pencils? I'm using, for the water brush, I'm using the Derwent. This one is a number 3. This is a flat. But I've used several different sizes of theirs. All of them I've liked. And I'm also using, if you want to see the other brushes that I've used on this so far, I've got a Taklon bristled filbert. My ends of this are just trashed. Oh my gosh, poor brush. This one is, it's called an oval wash. It's a 1/2 inch, but it's essentially a Teflon bristle filbert. Then I've got a watercolor brush. This one is a number 14 round. This one's okay. I kind of like it for looser areas on big sections. I was using that quite a bit. And then when I get into smaller areas, I've got a nice flat. That one is a number 1 flat. That one again is a Teflon bristle. I'm liking the Teflon bristle. The watercolor brushes, these ones, the bristles are a little bit more stiff, which I think I like a bit better. Which is funny because it seems like they're actually what I would consider to be cheap bristles if I were looking at an oil or acrylic painting. But for these, I'm really happy with the results that I've gotten with those. And you can see, look how dull that lead is, and it doesn't matter. It still comes out just fine. And that's part, because it's dull, I get more surface area cover, like it covers more faster, so it lets you go through it very quickly. Kitsy said, do you ever feel like you have too many mediums that you don't use? I regularly do. Like I did that with the my pigment markers, the Winsor Newton pigment markers. I'm like, there's a lot of mediums I don't use as often as I would like to. And then I go through phases where right now I'm like super interested in the watercolor pencil. So I almost only want to use these, and that doesn't make for very interesting videos when I make the same thing over and over. But yeah, I have a lot of mediums. I have a lot of supplies that I want to try and make reviews of. I just haven't gotten that far yet. I will eventually. Elena said, will watercolor paintings be valued higher than a comparable painting done in watercolor pencils? No. The value of a painting, there are too many factors. It's not just the medium. While some people will value based on the medium, it's not just the medium. There's so much more involved in what adds value to something. Mostly it's who the artist is. That has more to do with it than anything else. What kind of a name that artist has built for themselves. Yes, in galleries, that has traditionally been a problem where people, anything on paper, they really don't have a lot of respect for. But we're not limited to selling on galleries through galleries anymore. I mean, I sell more colored pencil work usually than I do my paintings. So, and my colored pencil work per square inch costs more. So it's not even an issue where you can say you can't sell things. It depends on, there's just so many factors. In that case, where am I selling? I'm selling online mostly. Where you're selling, what kind of audience you've built for yourself. Do people know who you are? The more people who know who you are, the more your work is generally going to be valued, no matter what medium you're working in. So there's just a lot of factors. Where am I losing my place? Oops, monitor just went out. There's so many factors that you definitely couldn't say one was worth more than the other. You do always want to watch your light fast ratings. That I think is important. And just like watercolors in general, there's plenty of watercolor pencils that are not light fast. Tanya said, I've signed up twice for your newsletter and I'm not getting it. What may I be doing wrong? Check your spam folder. It may be going just straight to spam. Lady Marigold said, have you ever used a water brush for OMS? I have not, because what I found with odorless mineral spirits, it's super thin. Like it leaks out of everything, and I don't want OMS leaking out of a water brush. I've heard of people saying they used it and liked it. For me, over time, I suspect that's going to leak, and that's going to make a mess I don't even want to deal with. So I'll just stick to brushes for me on that one. Stacy said, hi Lisa, does it seem like there's any wax in these pencils? Only on the one that hardly anything's coming out of. That's almost a good way to, actually it feels more like graphite than wax. Like that's what this pencil feels like. It's super annoying. But there are a couple, that one, there's a blue, there's a couple of these that are not so impressive. But waxy wouldn't be the word I would use to buttery. They're more buttery feeling, I think, than the Derwent were, but not waxy. I mean, if they were waxy, the wax wouldn't blend with water, so it couldn't be. Let's see. Will said, is there anything different you would do drawing a bokeh background with the new Fabriano paper? I'm thinking of your beautiful Snowy Owl from 2014. Different? Yeah. And I'm not sure what that would be just yet, because that paper, when you blend, well, maybe no, because it's the detail I had problems with. If I put like a ton of little detail and then blended, that detail didn't stay, it blended out. But with the bokeh background, I'm not putting a ton of detail, it's just circles. So I would probably do it about the same. I don't think there would be too much difference. I may not need to put as many layers. That I think would be the only difference. I'll have to try it one of these days, but I suspect I wouldn't need as many layers to get the same result. So that's a big bonus. Now, one thing I'm finding different with this, when I did the background for the lionfish with the Derwent pencils, I didn't try to do this kind of detail. I just kept it really loose. Here, I'm finding it's easier to get clean or to stay more in control. Like it doesn't blend out or spread as much. It doesn't act as much like the looser Derwent pencils did. Which is definitely going to come down to somebody's personal preference if they like that better or not. It's not like I don't want to make that sound like it means one's better than the other. It completely depends on what you're looking for. Bryson said, do you have any tips to blend watercolor like the way you do in your current work you are working on? Layers, lots of layers. At least with this, I didn't need as many layers with the Derwent as I'm finding that I do with this, but layering and start light. Don't jump to your darkest colors and blend like light to dark. Like here, I think you can see this. Let me double check you're able to see this area I'm pointing at. Okay, you can see this. Here, I didn't want to blend here and pull it. It'll smear and pull. Oh, my water brush. It'll pull the black into the purple and the pink. So you've got to be careful. Instead, I've got to blend this and then just be careful along that edge because the dark will blend into the light too much. So you've got to be very careful of that. In which colors you're using. Like there were areas down here I made mud on a few layers. It was ugly. I mean, it's live rock, which has a lot of different types of the pink algae growing on it. But which means it is muddy, but that's where I was going with that one. But you've got to watch the colors. They will bleed into each other, and that would be my biggest tip. Just be aware of what colors you're blending. So like here, I've got purple there. I'm actually going to start when I blend this one. Actually, let's just blend it and I'll show you. I'm going to start with the yellow, the lighter area. I'm not going to jump straight from purple into it because the yellow is the lighter of the two colors. And actually, as I get into this area, I'm going to wipe the paint off my brush because I want this to stay light. Now I can blend up into the purple, but I have to be careful. I don't want to pull the purple down that way or I'm going to end up with more of a brown color than what I want. So I've just got to be aware of what's going to happen when certain colors blend into each other. Now this is way too orange. That's okay. I'm going to put other colors on top of it. It's too much of a light yellow orange. Not quite the color I want there. Because this color I kind of need to save more for the I'm going to call him a lionfish, for the clownfish. So in order to make him pop out, I don't want to go too crazy yellowy orange. He should be the only thing that has the actual yellow orange on him. And see, as I get up into this area, this is mostly dry. I don't have dry pencil or anything. It's just dry paint where I've previously painted. Oops, that's getting a lot. Now here's an area, see, I've got a lot. Look how much yellow will come off. That's a lot just from one brush stroke. So I want to rinse that brush when I get up into this light area because I don't want that yellow just to smudge right into the light. I don't want it to, it would take over the light. I'm okay with it turning into kind of a cream color, but I don't want the yellow just to completely overpower that. Actually, while I'm blending, because I'll need to dry this with the hairdryer anyway, let's switch to the water brush. Actually, and always check too, the water brush, I can see that there's a bit of yellow on the tip. I've got a paper towel. I squeeze a little bit of water out and dry that onto that paper towel there. We're going to smudge that out. There we go. Actually, I'm going to come down here and blend that a bit more. I am so anxious. Like I can't even begin to tell you how anxious I am to try the same project with both the Derwent and the Caran Dosh because I'm curious when I do both at the same time what I may notice the difference of. Nikolai said, are you going to completely switch the paper you use for colored pencils and watercolor pencils? Yeah, I'm gonna look. I don't want the new Fabriano. I don't like for watercolor media. It stretches. I'm not thrilled with that. More than what the old one didn't used to behave this way. So I'm going to switch or I'm going to give Arches a good chance. I have high hopes for them because I did like the results that I got with the water-soluble graphite. That review will be coming soon. But I'm going to have to find something else for Inktense and watercolor pencils. I'm just not happy with the performance of the Fabriano yet. But the Fabriano, I'm still liking for colored pencil in general. I actually was pretty happy with that. I had to work around it in different ways. I'm going to try the Arches too. Maybe I'll switch all the way to Arches. We'll see. Lee Fiddler says Arches comes in bright white and natural. I think you must have been using the natural last week as you said it was kind of yellow. I know, and I loved that. It gave me this almost antique look to, oh, I put it away already. It's in my portfolio, but the graphite piece, it almost had an antique black and white feel to it. I loved it may have been natural. I don't know. It was gorgeous. I was so happy with it. Am I painting in an angle or drawing flat? Elena asks. I am upright. I'm almost 90 degree, like so close to 90 degrees upright because my back can't handle. I can't look down at all. So while, yeah, with watercolor, ideally you would paint flat. I think you'd have a bit more control. It just doesn't work for me. Plug your ears, hairdryer time. Okay. Artista Rachel said, since you produce so much artwork, what do you do with your originals? Do you sell them or do you have a ton of space to store them in? Curious, especially for your works on canvas. Okay, my walls in every room of this apartment are covered with canvas, with paintings. And it's funny, one of the things that I've been doing for the Frisco City Hall, the art in the atrium, about every 6 months or so, 4 months, 5 months, I don't know. Every so often they change them out. But I usually submit larger pieces just so because I'm running out of space and I'd rather have them hung there. But yeah, they're everywhere. You also have behind me, some of these are unpainted, most of these are unfinished canvases, but I have a lot of them in the teal cases. Those are finished paintings too. But my whole studio everywhere is storage space for canvas paintings. Colored pencils a lot easier. I've got some in the boxes up here, and I've got some in a portfolio there. I've got a couple that are framed, but those are much easier to store. The canvases, yeah, that's a bit of a problem. They are for sale. I just am really bad about letting people know or updating. I've got someone who's working with me for my social media stuff, and I need to talk to her about. We need to start doing more promo stuff to let people know what's available for sale, because I just run out of space. Because you can't sell stuff if people don't realize you have stuff for sale, and I'm really bad about pushing that. But yeah, I've got them all over. I mean, just the wall behind me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 paintings on this wall. 1, 2, actually those aren't even my paintings, those two don't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paintings on that wall, a couple behind me, and then a bunch on the floor there. So that kind of gives you an idea, and that's just one room of the apartment. Oh, Gail has a good tip. She says, I'm a photographer. Must use a tripod. Suggest timer on remote indirect light, like Lisa said. Yes, for taking a photograph of your work. Tripod is a absolute must. Every once in a while, I'll get lazy. What did I do that? Oh, I did it on the flowers, the graphite flowers. I'm like, I just need to grab a quick snap of them. I don't need to set up my tripod. I'm just going to, this is small, it'll be easy. No, you always end up, I mean, I've got image stabilizer on my camera, but you are always going to get that little bit of a shake where it's not crisp enough and there's not enough control. If you move slightly, you're no longer perfectly squared. Always, always, always use a tripod. Thank you, Gail. That is a must. How did I miss that? That's like the biggest tip. Any tips on painting a white tiger in acrylic? Yes, white is not white. White is whatever color is reflecting around it. You're going to have grays, blues, purples. Very, 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 very little actual white will be in your painting. That's my biggest tip for you there. Will Chicken be making a command appearance tonight? Yeah, actually, my husband gets off work, like now, I think. So he'll be home in a bit. I can have him bring Chicken in for me. You'll know when Matt gets home because I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. Chicken will lose his mind. He gets so excited when he hears Matt come home. He knows that means it's time for him to come out of the cage. Okay, so this is another area that is an absolute mess I'm missing a bunch of. So here's that one. This one curves, attaches to that. Oh, I'm only missing one line. Okay then. So let's go ahead. I'm going to start with the more orange color again. Actually, that's too orange. Let's start with a yellowy color for a few spots on this. But yeah, with the watercolor pencils, that's definitely one thing. Watercolor pencils, Inktense, graphite. That one of the things that I like a lot with them is that I don't have to worry about it being toxic for the birds. So I can have Chicken in here while I'm working on this. Well, he can be in here for safety reasons. He's okay. There's no paint fumes or anything. But Chicken thinks that he needs to bite everything and steal pencils out of my hand as I'm working on them, so he doesn't actually get to hang out while I work, because he's a bit of a brat when it comes to that. It's like, no, pay attention to me. How did I mask out the white area in the lower left? Ernesto asked. I know. I'm like, why am I reading that wrong? It's not masked out at all. I just painted around it. The paint or the watercolor, you have so much time to blend because it'll reactivate that it was no problem just being careful and working around it. But I didn't mask anything off. This is the Fabriano Artistico that is not liking masking fluid lately. So I didn't want to even chance it, and I just was careful. See, I can basically be scribbly, and it doesn't even matter. This will all blend out super smooth. Like, actually, oops, I just hit the, that's okay. I'm going to show you really quick. So see how I'm pretty scribbly, but it'll blend out. You'll really lose most of that. There's too much water on this brush. But I mean, I can get rid of the majority of those scribble lines. So now I pushed harder there. Ideally, you're not going to push as hard. Here's another area where it's very scribbly. I didn't push as hard, so those will blend out better. Now that's a good example too of what happens. Here I pushed too hard with a pencil, and see how you can still see those lines a bit? Here I kept a light hand. It was scribbly, but I kept a light hand, so you really don't see those lines anymore. The amount of pressure you use will make a big difference, more so than the direction you're going into. So if you're running into trouble where you can see lines, it's because you're pushing too hard. Bryson said, do you have any tips for blending two contrasting or similar watercolor pencils? For example, dark blue and light pink, or scarlet red and cadmium orange. If you mean like where they're up against each other, like I've got the purple up against the yellow, I blend the yellow separately and then come up and blend the purple, but I don't want to pull them into together too much, or I just make that brownish. It's a very neutral color. So just blend them kind of separately, the lighter color first. So let's say the pink and the blue. I would blend the pink areas and then blend that into the blue. I would not blend the blue and then pull that into the pink, because the blue will take over the pink. Are the pencils round or hexagonal? The end, whoops, I just lost it. I really, really, really wish this did not happen. YouTube improves stuff all the time, and this is one thing. I don't know why the chat just flies up when I keep it paused where I'm left off on the questions, and okay. Did I scroll too far now? I think I scrolled too far. Oh, here we go. Esme asked if the pencils are round or hexagonal. The end looks like they're squared a bit. Maybe it's the light. Hexagonal. They're pretty comfortable. I like that they're not just round because these don't roll off the table. So that's a big bonus for me. I've not had any problems with these rolling away. That fine art guy asked if I plan on doing mixed media with these colored pencils over these. Not on this project, but in the future, I'm sure I will. Those watercolor and colored pencil, if you do colored pencil on top of watercolor, such a good combination. Jessica wants to know if you can achieve the same results and finishes with colored pencil without OMS. Yes, I mean, it can be done. It's usually burnishing and different lighting. It can absolutely be done. I know of plenty of artists who don't use OMS, and the result looks just like somebody who does. It usually takes more time. I can't burnish because of the arthritis in my wrist. It causes too much pain. So that's not really an option for me anyway. OMS is the only reason that I was able to continue working in colored pencil. I actually now could go just with powder blender because that I don't have to push hard on. So that would be an option. But the way that I used to work with colored pencil was with burnishing, and the arthritis in my hand and my wrist, because it's worse in this hand than anywhere else, got to the point where that was just not even close to being, that was not the pencil I need, was not even close to being an option anymore. So OMS for me was a lifesaver as far as being able to continue working with. This is not really the color I want either. Oh well, we'll go with it. But yes, it can be done. You would just use different techniques. And there are techniques that I'm not going to teach you because the pain in my hand does not allow for me to work that way. Gail wants to know if there's a way to make a watercolor painting more light fast. I mean, you can use the UV protecting sprays. That's one option. Another option would be to use UV protecting glass. So if you go to like Hobby Lobby, I had them do that for the red panda that I've got framed in Inktense out in my my dining room area. That one I had them just, it was cheap too. It was only like an extra $5. I had them give me, or maybe it was 20. I don't know. It was worth it. But I put UV protecting glass over that. So those are things that you can do to help. Crystal's Art said, is the Caran pencil or aqua, I can't say it. I need to learn how to say that. Pencil better than the Derwent watercolor pencils. Are you going to try other brands of watercolor pencils? I'm definitely going to be using the Faber-Castell. That's the only other one that I'm super interested in. Caran are better in that they're light fast, or more light fast, but performance-wise, I don't know. I was really happy with the Derwent. So until I do a side-by-side comparison where I'm doing the same project, I'm really not going to be able to tell you for certain which is my preference. I liked them both, so for sure. There's the pencil I was looking for. That's what I wanted here. Let's see. There's the pencil I'm looking for. Jillian said you should try to create a hyper-realistic piece with watercolor pencils, like your color pencil works with that look. Oh, thanks. Actually, I've never done anything hyper-realistic. I only do photorealistic. Hyper-realism basically should look, a lot of people use that name and it's being used wrong. Hyper-realism, the difference between that and photorealism will look like a photo, but it's not real. Like you look at it twice, you're like, okay, I can tell it's a painting, but it looks like a photo at first glance. Hyper-realism, you can't tell. It looks like a HD, like super, like you can see the pores in the skin, super realistic. You shouldn't be able to tell with hyper-realism that it's artwork. Or it doesn't look like a painting. It looks like a high definition photograph. A lot of people misuse that term. For some reason, it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. An artist I really like recently, he does paintings, and he did a bunch of hashtags of hyperrealism, and I was like, but you don't paint you paint photorealism amazingly well, but that's not really hyperrealism. It doesn't mean that hyperrealism is better than photorealism. It's just that there is a difference. I don't know why that bugs me. But yeah, I may try to do, as far as making this more like the style that I do with the colored pencils, I may do that eventually. Right now, I'm still just getting a feel for them. But at the same time, I don't think that that's going to be my end goal with the medium because, I mean, I've already got colored pencils for that look. I kind of like that watercolor pencils can give you this looser feel, and that's really what I want to accomplish. What am I looking? Oh, wrong side. No, you're good. You are the one. Okay, you need the purple. Keep losing my place. Not that it really matters. No one will notice the difference. But I think that I want it to look distinctly different. Like Inktense is the same thing. I've done things with Inktense where it looked as realistic as stuff I've done with colored pencil, like the secretary bird is an example of that. But I like that it has a different feel. I like that it looks like a different medium versus the colored pencils. So I don't know if that's something I'll do much of. I kind of want to try it just for the sake of, let's see if I can make this medium look like the other, but I don't think it'll be something I do often or try that style often. Bryson said, any tips for blending watercolor pencil like the way you use on... I already answered that one. That must have been an old question. What do I know about Spectrum Noir colored pencils? Absolutely nothing. I'm super helpful. Blue said, are there any cheap liner brushes that you could recommend, either from Amazon, Dick Blick, or Michaels? Can't find any. Not that I know of off the top of my head. Try Simply Simmons has some good. I really have liked their brushes. So I would look for that. Katrina wants to know if it's a heat gun or a hairdryer. It is a hairdryer. A heat gun, you have to be careful not to burn your paper. I don't use heat guns on my work usually. How much did my Iwata airbrush cost? Thinking about getting a new one. I think it was like I think the airbrush itself was like $60 and I had a 40% coupon, or it was 80 and I had a 40%. I don't know. I had a coupon. So the airbrush itself wasn't a lot. The air compressor and the hoses and all those added up. But yeah, it wasn't too expensive. I got it at Hobby Lobby. But I tried the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen brush or any other artist pens. I have. It's cool. My husband likes them, so I've occasionally played around with stuff that he'll buy them and then never use them. But, ooh, this combined with that one works well. But, no, those ones are actually cool. I've done a few pieces of art, and I don't think I have anything on my website with them. I did some pet portraits with those years ago. Some line work that was pretty fun. But, I mean, I don't have enough experience where I could give you a good review of them. I have them. I've used them, but not a lot. Whoops. Scrolled too far. Esme said, Chicken is the quality control expert. Chicken is the one who reduces the quality of my art supplies. He wants to put holes in everything. His intuition and knowledge tells him to snatch the pencils from you. The worst is trying to put on mascara while Chicken is with me, because he'll get on my shoulder and I'll try to put the wand near my face and he's trying to pull it out of my hand at the same time. Yeah, he's super helpful. Rhonda said, can I use a small regular air compressor for an airbrush? You mean like the ones you get at the hardware store? They are super noisy. I have a friend who used to, and he created beautiful work with it. But, oh, dear God, are those things noisy. I don't know if you really... Like, for me, it ruined... I have to have a certain atmosphere to enjoy painting and drawing, and super loud things like that ruin it for me. So it is not something that I would personally use or necessarily even recommend, but it can technically be done. You have to make sure that you've got a regulator thing on it, or it catches the moisture or humidity. Rhonda wants to know if she can have permission to use my reference photo from my Cricut video. Huh? I have a Cricut video? I don't think I have a Cricut video. So I can't say if you can, because I don't know if... I mean, I know I do a lot of things that I forget about, but I don't think there's been any Cricuts. Specify that for me. Have I tried baby oil on Prismacolors? No, because I want my artwork to be archival, and baby oil ruins things. Baby oil is not what you want to do if you want your artwork to... Yeah, a lot of people are commenting here. Baby oil will cause yellowing. Yes. Yeah, everyone said, Lisa will say no. Baby oil is not archival. It is not. Baby oil is fine if you're a crafter and you just want to have fun with the materials, but you don't really care if it lasts. If you care if it lasts, you want to hang it in a gallery, you want to sell it, do not use baby oil. That is not what that's for. Yeah, she said that she had a feeling she saw some other art YouTubers promoting it instead of something like Mona Lisa. Yeah, you have a lot of YouTubers doing art that came from more of a crafting background. You don't know enough about fine art. I don't want to say, that sounds mean. That sounds judgy, but it's bad advice. Don't use baby oil. It's not for fine artists. It's not for anyone who actually wants their artwork to last. Nicole said some of the postcards I've gotten are smudged a little and I'm not sure what to do about it. The postcards you get through Patreon, they're postcards. They're all going to have smudges and stamps and weird things all over. I mean, it's a postcard. They're not going to be perfect. If you need, like, if they're really damaged, let me know and I'll replace them. But small smudges, small little things, they're all going to have that. That's just the nature of postcards going through the mail. If you want something that's like a print of that, let me know if I don't already have it in my print shop, but you can order like cards for like $5 if there's something that you really wanted that you wanted to frame and to be perfect. A postcard's not what you're going to want to go with. So those, but let me know if there were some that you wanted that I don't currently have in my print shop. What I may, you know what I think I'm going to do? I am going to do this. I'm going to do something for you guys on Patreon. It'll take me a bit to set it up, but I want to make sure that I can do some sort of a code that'll give you, I've got to look into how to do it, but I want to make it so that you can get, if you wanted like, not postcards, but they would be like gift card or folding cards. They have those. I'll see if I can get those to make it so that you can get that at my cost. So you can, if you wanted something that you really wanted to print and to be perfect. But I mean, postcards going through the mail are going to have smudges and things on them. If it's like a big thing going through the middle and it's completely ruined, let me know. I'll replace it. But little things here and there, that's how postcards go. Let's see. Rhonda said, if I choose to buy a brush and pencil blending instead of the odorless mineral spirit Mona Lisa, is that a good choice? Yeah, brush and pencil, they're wonderful. You don't forget, though, you need the paper, too. You need to go with sanded paper. You can't just use your regular, whatever you've been using for your colored pencils. It won't play nice. You do need sanded paper. So either UArt 500 is what I've used or Fisher 400. Both of those have worked out really, really well for me. And some people prefer different grit on the UArt. It's going to be personal preference, but the 500 I liked. It was pretty close to the Fisher 400. Oh, it was supposed to be cricket, not cricket. What did I do on that? Oh, wait. Was that the flowers with the water-soluble graphite? I think that was one of our Patreon reference photos. So if you're on Patreon, you'll get access to that photo there. Gail said, could we see the clownfish reference pic or would it mess up your setup? I don't have it on this computer, so I can't show you. But if you go, I think if you go over to Facebook, if you're not already on Patreon, if you're on Patreon, you've got the photos posted there. But if you're on, if you look on Facebook, I think I've posted this month's reference photos there. I should have. And you can see it's in the middle on the $9 one. Okay, let's see. I need this to start getting to be a little bit more bold. Let's pull some of this purplish red, annoyingly bad pencil in. Pretty color, but super scratchy. It's almost like working with maybe a 6H pencil. Like it's that scratchy and hard, which doesn't seem right for this. So notice that I'm not just outlining everything. If you outline things, it looks too cartoony. What I'm doing is taking an area, I'm hyping up contrast on one side, pulling it up into the subject so it fades out. So one line has a harsh edge, but it fades this way, so it's not just a heavy outline. I really need this to be more peach than orange. It's gotten too yellowy, so let's just pull this color right over all of that. That yellow will poke through a bit. It'll give it a really nice glow under this peach color. Max says, thank you for the new search page of the Patreon videos. It's more easy than the native search of the Patreon page. Yeah, Patreon search of videos is horrible. I'm really excited about the new one that that's on my site. I'm also working on, I posted a link to it. If you are signed up for my email newsletter, you'd see it. I posted a link. I'm working on incorporating Patreon to my website. They made a plugin that works with my site. So I'm working on getting it to where you can, yeah, my husband's home. I can hear Chicken losing his mind out there. I'm working on having everything on my site. So you would log into the site through Patreon, and then you get access, and it gives you more information with like where the reference photo, links to the reference photo, lots of stuff that isn't over on Patreon. So I'm pretty excited about some of those changes. I spent all night Saturday working on that, and I only got 12 videos with their own page out of, gosh, there were probably 160, 170, I don't know, there's a lot of Patreon videos, and I got 12 done. So it's going to be a long process to move everything over. Hopefully it works out okay. I'm a little bit worried that it might cause too much traffic to my website if I send everyone to Patreon over there, so I don't know how my website's going to handle the increased flow there. But I'm kind of excited about some of the changes. It's one thing I love about the Patreon platform. There's a lot of things I love about it, but one of the things I love is that they are constantly trying to improve things, constantly trying to fix stuff and make stuff better. Like I had a phone call with them, was it last week or the week before? They're making some changes. One of the things, there's a few things that I'm hoping they go through with. It'll make things easier, like merch and that sort of thing. But they like actually cared about what my opinion was on certain things. Like they wanted to know why I don't use certain features, why I don't do certain things. And I let them know why it wouldn't work for me and what would need to be done in order to make it work. And they cared. Like they were taking notes, and really, I mean, it's a pretty impressive platform. I'm excited because I think that it's a platform that will stay around a long time because they do care so much about what you guys think, what the creators think, everybody. So that one, I was pretty happy after that phone call. But they recently did that WordPress plugin, so everything should be able to be straight through my website, and you wouldn't even have to go to Patreon itself to watch the videos. One person said videos that typically skip and don't play for her, it worked just fine over on Patreon. I'm like, wow, that might, or not on Patreon, on my website. So I'm kind of excited to hear that too. Hopefully all of that will work well. Now what I'm doing here, all of this, none of it makes sense. It's like random shapes. I'm looking at it as abstract shapes. I'm not looking at it as an anemone. If I do, I'm going to lose sight of everything. This is just a hot mess. So you just look at the shapes, copy what you see basically. Joseph Fincham likes the sloth picture from the, oh, I got so many pictures of that sloth. He was being so adorable. He was eating, and it's so funny because the girl handed him the food, and he'd reach out when I was taking photos that day. He'd reach out so slow for it. Once he got it, his mouth was going like so fast. Once he started eating it, like that made him move fast, but the actual reaching for the food, it was so cute. Okay, what is better for colored pencil, paint? What's better, color pencil or paint for photorealism? Depends on the artist. Both can achieve it. Both can achieve hyperrealism. It just depends on the artist. Which form of medium, wax, oil, watercolor, or Inktense, oil, and acrylic? Now, I work a lot with Inktense, and I will say Inktense and watercolor are probably the two that I would say would be more difficult for photorealism. But it absolutely can be done. It's just that it's a little bit harder to control the medium. I like that about it, and am intentionally not using it to get super realistic, but that is definitely something. I think that those two mediums are a bit harder to control than colored pencil or paint when going for photorealism, but it absolutely can be done with them. I wouldn't say one's better than the other. I could say one's easier, but a lot of it's just going to come down to your experience and what you prefer. I mean, somebody who's been working in colored pencil for 20 years is going to have a much easier time making something look photorealistic than someone who's been working in acrylic paint for 2 years. So that's, it's kind of hard to say that one definitely is going to do one thing or another. Okay, this is super orange. I may regret this, but I'm going to do it anyway. We'll just use a light hand. I won't push very hard. But I need a different orange so that it stands out against the one that it's next to. And I need this to be way darker than the one in front of it. You can pull a little bit of yellow in there. Or yellowy orange. Oh, it's just called Orange. Wow, that's a simple name. I'm calling it all kinds of fancy things. Just Orange. As May said, when chicken gets excited, does he do the chicken dance? No. Well, if you call flapping all over his cage trying to get my attention, so I'll take him out, yes. Or if I get near him and he's all excited, him reaching his foot forward trying to grab me through the bars. It's really cute. Not really a dance, though. Are we going to be able to meet the new family member bird too? Not unless my husband comes in, and he never wants to be on video, so I doubt you'll get to meet Nugget. I can hear Chicken singing Game of Thrones in the other room right now. He's a happy chicken. But no, Nugget is not my bird, and we want to make sure that he bonds to Matt. So the only contact he has with me is me cleaning his cage, or if his water needs to be changed during the day, something like that. But I'll talk to him through the bars when I go in to see Chicken. It's working. My God, does that bird love Matt? But Chicken bonded to me, and we don't want to chance that happening with the little guy, so I can't like bring him in and hold him myself, or we don't want another chicken incident. Chicken was not supposed to bond to me. Debbie wants to know how to subscribe to my newsletter. I should have a link in the video description. If not, if you go to my website and scroll down a bit, there's a big pop-up thing. You can subscribe there. Let's see. Cry87 said, I missed what you've done so far. Could you please give a quick explanation of what you've done so far? I drew things and I blended them. You really didn't miss much. This is a rinse and repeat. You'll see the whole thing on the full video when that goes up, but it's just what I'm doing here is what I did everywhere else. It's just a matter of choosing what my values are. I'm not even super worried about my color being exact. I'm more worried about values than anything else. So make sure my darks are dark enough, my lights are light enough, and I'm just slowly building, making a mess. But you didn't really, you didn't miss out on anything different because what I'm doing from here on is the same thing I've already done. Rachel said, any recommendations for beginner watercolor pencil kits? Just to see if it's a field we're interested in without having to spend the $280. Derwent, I would go with the Derwent watercolors. They're not too expensive, and I loved the performance of them. So Derwent would be what I would recommend there. And you don't need to get every color. Just get a handful of colors. They mix and blend so well. Like these or the Derwent. These are fairly expensive. If you're just testing to see if you like them, I wouldn't go with these. I would go with the Derwent. But you do want to make sure that you go with a pencil that has enough pigmentation that you're going to get a good idea if it's something you like or not. If you go with a crappy pencil, like I've used other brands of watercolor pencil, and there was no pigment. So I just assumed I didn't like them. They're all the same. I don't like it. No, it was the difference of the pencil. So Derwent is safe. That one has a really good pigment and blends beautifully. So that would be my recommendation there. And I think Derwent, you can get them for like $80 for the full, if you wanted the full set, it's like $80 something on Amazon. You can get the smaller sets for way less though. Oops, scroll too far. There we go. Gail said, in 1984, I made my parents' portraits using colored pencil watercolor pastels and makeup and whiteout. We were poor then. Thankfully, I've learned a lot and can afford quality supplies. I so hear you on that. That's, yeah, I have done a lot of that in my time of just, you use what you've got. I mean, it's not something I could have sold, but it was how I learned. I would have learned faster, I think, with better supplies, but I'm also grateful that I had, my big one was chalk, like chalkboard chalk. You would get the pastel colors for a chalkboard, and I would draw with those and then charcoal. I did a lot of work like that, and just whatever the cheapest watercolor I could get at the, it was a pharmacy type store, like CVS type thing. I don't remember what it was called, the one that I used to go to, but I had art supplies were from there. And that's where I got the chalk, charcoal, and watercolor. And so much of what I did was from that. You know what? I don't regret that though. I don't regret, me and my mom always talk about that. Like, I don't regret growing up as poor as we were, because it makes me appreciate stuff so much more that I wouldn't have had I grown, you know, that is not what I want to use that I wouldn't have otherwise. So I'm actually really grateful for the financial trouble and struggles that we had when I was a kid. As silly as that sounds, I don't know. I feel like I'm a happier adult because of it. I'm happier, like, knowing how grateful I should be that I have art supplies, because that was a challenge, you know, not something we really had then. Or like buying plants. I'm so grateful every time I get to buy a new plant, because I'm addicted to them. For God's years, even after I was married, years, we did not have money to spend on something like that. So, no, it makes me pretty grateful to have had to kind of half do art with what I had available, because oh my gosh, like every time I walk in my studio and I see all the stuff in here, and it's just like, this is a heaven, and I wouldn't have appreciated it had I not been using chalkboard pastel, or the pastel colored chalk for chalkboards for so long, that sort of thing. And the funny thing is, at the time, I didn't feel like I was missing out. I didn't even know there were better art supplies. Like, I had no idea. So that was also a thing. Oops. Sita said, are colored pencils blended with alcohol archival? I think, as far as I know, I've not researched this too heavily. I think they're okay. It's not, I think it can dry out the paper a bit more than OMS. See, I've not, because I've tried to find more information on that, and I've not found anything super good. I've heard some theories that it dries paper out. It can make the paper more brittle or cause problems that OMS doesn't. I've never seen it one way or another, how that is affected. I know that the Prismacolor, they've got a colored pencil blending marker, and I think that uses an alcohol base for blending. So honestly, I'm going to go with, I'm not positive. I don't use it, and I've heard enough negative about it that I'm like, okay, it just doesn't make sense. OMS makes more sense for me, but I would say research that to find out for sure, because I don't want to give you bad information. But I think that was something, well, for me, I'm really sensitive to alcohol. It gives me a really bad, isopropyl alcohol especially, massive headache if it like touches my skin or if I breathe it much. So it's really, really weird, because OMS doesn't do anything to me. But so for me, it's something that I have to avoid anyway. You can see it blends really pretty. You have to be careful, because it's easy to overblend and end up, like because this whole section is wet, I could easily keep blending and blending into where my purple and my orange are one solid ugly color. So you have to be very, very careful not to overdo it just because you can. Like blending anything, oil paint's the same way, acrylics, anything you're blending, usually you only need a few brush strokes. And one of the things that I keep doing is I'm squeezing a little bit of the water out and getting the watercolor off the brush, so that I don't just keep spreading the same color over and over again all over the place. But that's how I'm cleaning this the bristles on this. I'm just squeezing the water out onto a paper towel and wiping that on that paper towel. Okay, it looks like that all needs to be blended with a larger brush. Wolf asked what made me decide on getting birds. I had birds growing up. We used to braid, or my parents worked with a lady. They kept they were technically her birds. I don't know. They had some deal with this lady who bred macaws, or owned a lot of macaws. So my parents bred macaws and lovebirds, and I got to hand feed them. So we had so many birds growing up. Lots and lots of birds in our house. And so I've always been a bird, like, I love birds. But they started doing that. I want to say, I don't know, I was a teenager when they had some of the bigger birds. But we've always had a lot of birds in our house. And then when I got married, we had a cockatiel for a while. until, well, we had her until we moved to Texas, and then we didn't think she'd make the trip over here, so we found her a good home out there, or in California. But when we moved here, what set it off, my husband has always kept saying he wanted his room where he plays his video games and everything, he wants a little buddy to hang out with him in there besides just the dogs. So, because the dogs usually want to be in the room with me. So he got, or he had been talking about that for a while. We went to the aquarium, and they had a palm cockatoo, and it was just being super cute, trying to get our attention. And Matt was saying how much he wants he wants a macaw. And I'm like, I lived with macaws. I don't want to, they're very destructive, and they require a lot of attention that I don't think we can provide a home that would be suitable for a macaw. Like, even if we were in a house, I don't think, it's not just because we're in an apartment. But I'm like, why don't you can get a little bird, get a cockatiel or something like that. So that's what started that. And then the cockatiel, or chicken, bonded with me, and so he needed his own bird. Although the reason that we got Nugget was more because I didn't want Chicken to be in the room by himself when we're both working. So he needed a buddy in the same room. They're not in the same cage, just the same room. But that is a long answer to a very short question. Let me plug your ears. Hairdryer time. Okay, yeah, this has been sagging a bit, so you're not quite getting the top of that. There we go. Okay. That fine art guy said the whole using what you have and trying your best is the whole reason I love watercolors. Do you have any tips for broke artists other than use what you've got? Well, I mean, it depends on where they're at. Like, let's say you're a broke artist and you have no money for supplies. Graphite. Go with graphite, even water-soluble graphite. The ones that I used was working on it last week. It's like under $10 on Amazon for the full set. Those, and you can use I'd use a hot press watercolor paper, but you don't have to use, as long as it's acid-free, you can use that to get started. Don't let your lack of funds keep you from making art. Don't let that be the reason that you don't, because I learned to draw, I learned to blend, I learned values, I learned a lot from using my crappy materials. So it wasn't even, I'm gonna soften that out. I don't think this is quite as opaque as the Derwent white. I'll have to test the two together. But anyway, graphite is a really good way to make art in learning your values. And the great thing with graphite is working in black and white, you are forced to really, really focus on your values. You're not focusing on color. You're focusing on what is one of the most important things in art are your values. It's just such a good way to start. So anyone who is like, they want to get started in art, don't have a lot of money, I would say absolutely get started with graphite. Because for years, the only graphite pencil I used, I had the Prismacolor, what did they call it? Ebony. And then I ended up, I actually don't recommend that pencil at this point. I don't love that one. But the General's Layout Extra Black is the other graphite that I used, where I would do an entire piece just with that pencil. So I didn't even have a full set of graphite pencils. I had one, the darkest I could get, just that one. And then slowly I'd add, a mechanical pencil or other values of that. But I learned to do stuff just with that pencil. And even when I first started doing pet portraits, I was only using that one pencil for graphite pieces. You can do a lot with very little, and the great thing about that is that those pieces were still archival. Graphite's archival. I'm working on acid-free paper, and I'm using a graphite that isn't going to fade. There's no worry about that there. So I was able to sell those pieces, which could put money back into getting more art supplies of other things that I wanted later on. But it gave me such a good understanding of values to spend so much time working in graphite and working in black and white. So that would be a huge, huge recommendation I would have for somebody who is like, I don't have a lot of money, but I want to get started. Graphite. And if you want to get used to working with a brush, go with water-soluble graphite. Add that to your list. And it's so nice because, you can enter galleries. You can enter art shows. It's archival. Even the cheapest graphite pencil, you're archival. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah, I think I might like the Derwent watercolor or white better. We'll have to, I'm anxious to try those two together because I think it was a little bit more opaque. Ellen said, do you follow the values in your photo you choose exactly, or do you do a study before you begin? I don't follow anything exactly. I follow close, but I change things. I mean, these are pretty close to my photo. It depends on which monitor I'm looking at, honestly. I've got to fix the color calibration. It's all screwed up on my main monitor, but it's close. I don't do a study. I don't enjoy studies. I enjoy just jumping in. Like, seriously, just jump into the deep end and get started. Did I not blend that out? I'm definitely not one who has ever really been big on studies. I've barely done sketches. Now, since I can design stuff in Photoshop, figure out what crop I want, I do all of that there. That's where I don't need to do a study because I can do that. But, it's not that there's anything wrong with doing studies, if that's how you like to work. I just don't. Rhonda said, would a battery-operated makeup brush cleaner work for paintbrushes? And can I use the Masters brush cleaner and conditioner to work both artist and makeup brushes? Yes, I use it for both the artist and makeup brushes when I use makeup brushes for my artwork. For the battery-operated makeup brush cleaner, those look so impractical to me. It just makes more sense to wash them normal. I've watched videos on that and wondered, but there was I can't remember what it was. There was a real reason that I was like, yeah, that actually doesn't look like it's going to make sense. Like it didn't, oh no, I started reading the reviews and the brushes don't always like to stay where they're supposed to in the holder when you spin it. So I don't know. I mean, you can try it, but it didn't look super practical to me for brushes. But as far as like using the Masters cleaner or Masters brush cleaners, that isn't, you can use that on makeup or, well, I mean, I don't use that on my makeup brushes that I'm using on my face. I don't know if there's anything toxic there. But on my paint brushes that are actually makeup brushes, I use that same brush cleaner on those too. Now the nice thing, this white is lightening it up. Obviously not straight back to white, but it lightens it up to where it's a very subtle, nice, realistic looking highlight. And I say realistic because sometimes if you go too straight white, it doesn't look realistic anymore. Okay, this one definitely needs to be darkened up. Are these watercolor pencils light fast? Max asked. That was hard to say. Would you try the Faber-Castell Albert Dürer? And the watercolors can be used as underpainting for pencils like polychromos. So watercolors being light fast. Most of the ones in this set are, but I'm not sure if they test them. They probably do like Derwent does, and I'm not positive on this, so don't quote me. I need to find out. But if they do like Derwent does, they're not testing once water is added, and that's going to affect the light fast qualities, but we don't know what those results would be. So that's, you know, something to keep in mind. They are light fast, but we do need to find out if they're just testing dry or if they're testing with water too. Can they be used as an underpainting for polychromos? Absolutely. Will I try the Faber-Castell? Absolutely as well. I just haven't gotten that far yet. I've got to save up a bit because these cost a stupid amount of money, and so I've got to wait before I buy more stuff. Where did that go? Okay. Debbie said, why do you use the dryer? I'm drying the work. It's doing two things. One, it's drying it so I can go on to my next layer right away. It's two, it's pulling the paper back into its original shape because the paper, this paper especially, the Faber-Castell warps so, the newer Faber-Castell warps so bad. So it pulls it back into shape since I have it taped down along the edges. I need to see about pre-stretching this. I don't think this paper is intended to be pre-stretched because it came in a block, but the block fell apart. So I don't know. We'll have to see if that would help with the losing its shape. Vladimir said, any advice for practicing hand-eye coordination? My goal is to draw anything semi-realistic straight out of my head. Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not how that works. If you're drawing cartoons, absolutely no problem. If you're trying to go super realistic, you don't draw that straight out of your head. No one does. To a certain extent. Now, let's say, it depends on what it is. Like, okay, for me, I've painted enough dolphins, I can draw them out of my head. fairly accurately. They're going to be more accurate if I've got a reference photo, but they'll be pretty accurate. There's certain subjects that I've painted so many of, I can be fairly close. So that's really the only way that you're going to have things where you just, it's not a hand-eye coordination. It has nothing to do with hand-eye coordination. This isn't a sport. This has to do with your brain. Well, for one, you do need to learn to control how light or hard you push on a pencil. But again, that's not hand-eye coordination. That's just learning to recognize the pressure. But you've got to teach your brain to see things accurately, to look at that reference photo or look at your subject if you're drawing from life, to look at that and translate that into the paper. It has nothing to do with hand-eye coordination though. So I think that's the first thing to understand. It's teaching your brain to see things accurately, because we have a tendency, and this is what's going to happen if you're thinking you're going to draw out of your head, your brain thinks things look a certain way, and when you start to draw, you realize that doesn't look like a person, because your brain's taking over. That's why you need either a reference or if you're working from life, that works too, either way, something to look at, because your brain will try to take over and tell you the wrong information. The trick is to teach, and this, the more you draw, the more your brain starts to learn what things really look like. It's not an issue of, again, I can't stress this enough, nothing to do with hand-eye coordination. This is just learning. The more you practice, the more you're going to see things accurately. But I don't know why. I would almost guess, just based on the question, that you're fairly young, because it seems to be something that a lot of young people think when they first start with art. They think that being able to draw straight from your head means that you're more skilled. It has nothing to do with that. If you're trying to go realistic, you need reference. Again, real life, reference photo, either way is fine, but you need something to look at if you're drawing things realistically. Any of the old masters, any single one of them, they had something to look at. They weren't drawing from their head. That's not, I mean, they changed things. They had, obviously, the ones who were drawing demons and all of these crazy things, they were going somewhat from their head, but they had something to look at. The people, they had models to look at as they were painting. They had things to see there. So I think that that's a very, very important thing to understand, and not get caught up in this idea that so many young artists think of, well, if you're good, you don't need a reference photo. That is not how it works at all. Like, I can't stress the at all part enough. The more you paint and draw in it, you will get to a point, if you keep painting the same subjects. Let's say you're obsessed with clownfish. You paint clownfish over and over and over and over again. After you painted 50 of them, yeah, you don't really need a reference photo anymore. You have just nailed in every little detail to where you can be really realistic. But that's not that. That's one thing. You've now learned how to paint one thing. Everything else is still going, you're going to have to paint that next thing. So let's say, okay, you've mastered clownfish. You can paint them without a reference photo. Now you've decided that you want to master giraffes. So you paint 50 of those, and you get to the point where you painted them in so many different positions, so many different lighting sources, so many different things, 50, 100, whatever, you've mastered that. Okay, that just took you 5 years to master 2 things to paint out of your head. You have to have something to look at when you're going for something realistic. I mean, if you want to be good. Someone will always say, well, this person doesn't do it. I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, there are certain things, like my husband can draw people fairly, like he can draw the outline and he understands the proportions fairly realistic of people, but he couldn't go through and make it look like a photograph. He absolutely can't unless he has photograph. And this is somebody who can draw from his head as well as I've ever seen anyone be able to draw from memory the human figure. But he's not going to make it look like a photograph of that person without having that person to look at. If that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. Phyllis wants to know if Chicken has a fancier name. I think you remember you calling him something else. Yeah, his original name was going to be Jace. That's what my husband named him, but I kept calling him Chicken, and now Chicken is his name. Chicken is a much better name. Rhonda said, how would you stretch watercolor paper and why do you need to? Because it doesn't hold its shape. See, I don't know if you can see how it's really moving here. It was worse earlier. I had to fix some of that. But it will stretch out when you add water. It'll completely warp. If you stretch it, if you pre-stretch it, you can soak it in water beforehand and then pull it out and let it dry, or make it dry flat. There's so many different methods, but it'll keep it from re-stretching it to the extent that this is here. So that is the reason that most people do. But Fabriano, I've never needed to pre-stretch. It was already perfect, and now it's not. But it's to prevent the warping. Melissa said, what would you recommend? Where to start after a stroke? Huh? if you mean health-wise, I'm not sure. Because, I mean, that's not something I've ever experienced myself, so I'm really not sure. I think I would guess just getting started. Pick something that you enjoy. Maybe, let's say, if you're having, it depends on, too, because people are affected by strokes a little bit differently. So, let's say you previously painted roses and you had mastered them. You just really liked the work that you did when you did roses. Like, you thought you were absolutely perfect. After the stroke, you no longer could do roses well. You were having a hard time drawing them accurately. I think that would get too frustrating, and you'd be better off to pick a new subject. Something that you didn't previously draw that you're almost starting over again. That might make it a little easier, but honestly, I'm just guessing because it's not something I've dealt with at this point, so I can't say for certain. I would think if you've got a physical therapist, they may be able to give you some more information, some more suggestions, because I'm certain more people have dealt with that. So I would go that way. Andrew said, do you cover your mistake using white gouache or white ink? Neither. I'm just using the white watercolor pencil. I've not made any mistakes that I couldn't just cover with that or make them work. Scroll too far. Do I prefer hot press or cold press? I prefer, bleh, that did not come out right at all. Hot press for sure. It's smoother. Horsey Girl said, is Nugget a cockatiel? Same as chicken. How did Nugget get his name? All I can think is chicken nuggets. Yeah, JCP Creamer 13. I think I just said his name right. That was his fault. I posted on Instagram. He decided, I asked I was going to name him Peep, but I asked you guys if you could guess his name because I thought that was a pretty obvious name that I would name a bird. And he guessed Nugget and threatened to unfollow me if I didn't name him Nugget. So obviously that has to be his name. No, but I thought it was so funny that when I told my husband starts cracking up and he goes, that we're going to have to call him that now. So yeah, that's how he got his name. And no, he's not a cockatiel. He's a parrotlet. Cute little guy. There are photos of him over on my Instagram. Tiny. He's like teeny tiny. Cockatiels are big. He's this little tiny guy. He's so cute. So much attitude. Like he keeps chasing Chicken away from my husband when he's holding them both. He's a bit possessive of Matt. So we have to protect Chicken and make sure he stays safe. Cockatiels are like the pansy of the parrot world. They don't really stick up for themselves, so the other birds can really pick on them, so you have to really watch out for them and keep them safe. Because they won't do it themselves. Well, sometimes, not usually. Bryson said, have you done a painting with only a single range of color? Reds, medium reds, dark reds? Probably at some point. I'm looking around, nothing in my studio right now. I've done like well over 1,000, probably closer to 2,000, 3,000 paintings in my lifetime. I don't remember them all. Every once in a while I'll come across an old one and go, I know I did that, but I don't remember it at the same time. So I'm almost certain that I have, but it's been a long time. Let's see. Gail said, what method do you use to get the layout on your paper canvas? Projector, trace with carbon pencil, or do you eyeball it? With this one, I used a projector. I designed it in Photoshop. Well, I mean, I've got the reference photo in Photoshop. Cropped it to the size that I wanted, so I had everything positioned exactly how I wanted, and then I used a projector to make sure everything stayed in perspective to where it was. This would be easy enough to freehand too. The reason that I like using the projector though is I'm certain to keep, even if I was going to freehand it, I would have freehanded it on a smaller piece of paper and then used a projector to project it onto here to make sure that I keep my fish the same, everything's positioned exactly right. I feel like I have more control when I do that. Vladimir said, basically, I meant like trying to draw or paint something outlandish and weird like a dragon or something not exactly realistic. Even then, I would recommend get photos. So let's say you're going to paint a dragon. I would get reference photos of, or in the case of not wanting to use reference photos, draw a lot of like iguanas, bearded dragons, different types of reptiles so that you can get a feel for their skin texture. If it's a dragon with feathers, draw a lot of birds. Do that a lot. And that way when you go into drawing the dragon, you can incorporate the shape of the reptiles with whether it be the feathers of the bird or the scales from the reptile. You can incorporate so much. Fish, draw fish. Practice drawing freshwater fish especially. Some of the bigger ones have these huge scales that are just really obvious in those photos, more so than marine life, so or marine fish. So that would be another thing I would practice drawing, so that when you want to do that sort of thing, no matter what it is you're doing, you want to learn to do the texture by finding something else that has a similar texture. So with a dragon, obviously you're not going to get a reference photo of that, but you can get texture that you want from other subjects. Practice drawing those subjects, and then you can apply what you learn there to your dragon. That question makes way more sense now. Thank you for that clarification. Creative Gen DIY said, can you give any tips on painting an ocean sunset? My painting looks very flat. Contrast for one, high contrast. Another, let's say you're doing a sunset that has yellows, oranges, blues, purples, all of that. You want to make sure you fade from the right color into the next. So you would go yellow into orange, orange into magenta or red first, but then into magenta. It depends on if you want the red. I usually skip red and go straight to magenta. Magenta into purple, purple into blue. You don't generally want to go the yellow straight into the blue, because you're going to end up with green. And unless you want green, if you want green, that's fine. But assuming you don't, let's say you're doing this really rainbow type sunset, yellow to orange, orange to magenta, magenta to purple, purple to blue. That's how you're going to fade those colors, because those colors, that line in between where each one mixes with the next, blends really nicely. But if you blend yellow right into the blue, you're going to get that green transition. So that would be my biggest tip there. And just practice, honestly. Looking flat without seeing it, I really can't say why it looks flat, but those are the biggest tip I can give you are on those colors, doing that in that order. Warrior Potato on a Unicorn, I love that name. Can chicken come out now for the last of the live stream? What are we at? Oh, yeah, let's actually turn this off. Let me text Matt and ask him to bring chicken to the door. Oh, half the time he leaves his phone in the other room and doesn't see it. I didn't realize we were this late. Let me go grab him, and then I will come back and answer some more art questions. I will be right back. He actually didn't want to come with me. He was eating millet with my husband, which is unusual. Usually when he sees me, he loses his mind and wants to get to me. But he was like, no, I was eating millet. You interrupted my eating. Okay, let's see if we've got a few more questions here. Oh, look at all this stuff for you to get into, huh? Oops, scrolled too far. Rhonda said, can I substitute glassine with wax paper or vellum? What makes glassine special? Glassine, nothing will stick to it. So vellum, things will stick to. What else? I used to use tracing paper. Things can stick to it. So like on this, I wouldn't really worry too much about it. But if you, let's say you get a little nugget of pencil stuck under the paper, when you put your hand on it, it might mush it into the paper and you might end up with a mark. Realistically, I never really had problems with it. It can smudge things a little bit where glassine won't. So anything is better than nothing though. So I have known of people who use wax paper. I've known of people who, I never used that one myself. What? Oh, sorry. It's his girlfriend. He wants to talk to my hand. When I do like this, he gets all excited. Is it your girlfriend? Yeah? You got to flirt with your girlfriend? But, yeah, so anything like that. Are you a big chicken? You going to tell me you're a big chicken? Big chicken. Come on. Big chicken. I have to flap my arms in the air like an idiot, but that's how I get to do it. Big chicken. Come on. Big chicken. Big chicken. You're going to be a big chicken? You need to be on my... Where are you going? Be a big chicken. Come on. Big chicken. Big chicken. Come on. Big chicken. Big chicken. Put your wings up. Come on. Big chicken. Big chicken. Come on. Big chicken. Yeah, it's a big chicken. Big chicken. Come on. Big chicken. Yeah, big chicken. There's not room for me to wave my arms in the air right, so he's not doing it quite right. But anyway, yes, anything that you can cover is better than nothing, but the glassine stuff won't stick to, so you're less likely to run into issues. Like I just sent an oil painting. I wrapped that in glassine because the glassine's not going to stick to the painting. So it's used for all kinds of stuff. Aloria Fine Art said, any advice on keeping a consistent light source when using multiple reference photos? Graphite, let's see. Whoops, lost it. Consistently when using multiple reference photos. Giraffe drinking from a teacup. Yes, you read that correctly. I have a vision, okay? I try to find reference photos that have similar light sources as much as possible, and sometimes you're just going to have to wing it. So let's say in this case, giraffe drinking from a teacup. I would get a cup in your house, even if it's not exactly the type of teacup that you're painting in yours, and set up a mock situation where the lighting on that is similar to the lighting on the reference photo from your giraffe, because I'm assuming you don't have the giraffe to work with, so you've got to use the light source on the giraffe versus the teacup. You could set up your own light source. Where are you going? This is why I have a chicken protection kit. You are unsafe. So anyway, that would be my suggestion there, is to use the teacup. Just figure out what the light source is on the giraffe and try to make something that is as similar as possible. Vladimir said, totally appreciate being blasted out of the water, though I feel like it probably keep my wild brain under control. You know, and it's not just you. It seems like all young artists have a tendency to think that you're going... In order to be a good artist, you have to draw out of your head. And it just doesn't, it's just not reality. It's just not how it works. And I'm not sure where that idea comes from, but I've seen that so often, and it's almost always very, very young artists that thought process is going through. Maybe deviant art is warping everyone's brains. I don't know. Let's see. Whoops, scroll too far again. Let's see. Bryson said, have you ever thought about doing or ever done a weekend live stream? Sorry for all the questions. No, I'm grateful for your questions. Thanks for asking them. Actually, it's funny you bring that up. It's not this weekend, the following weekend. Sheldine Fine Art, if you're familiar with her, she does amazing work here on YouTube. Her and I are going to be doing a collaboration live stream. I think we're planning 8 p.m. on the 14th. So I'll announce it it'll be in my newsletter and what? It'll be everywhere. I'll post that all over the place for you guys when we do that. But we are having that coming up very, very soon. Andrew said, how do you feel about the recent shooting in the YouTube and shooting in San Bruno? I feel like that woman had some mental instabilities that I feel like anyone who does something like that, there's something very wrong with them. That is not somebody who was right in the head. And the excuse, and I know what gets me more than her doing it, like she's a horrible, I'm sorry, that's a horrible thing. There's something very wrong with you if you go and shoot another person. But what got me are how many people are like, yeah, that's what YouTube gets for making bad decisions. And it's like, no. So yeah, I just really, 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 really hope that the people who are shot heal well and don't have any long-term after effects from that. I think somebody doing something like that is just, wow. Wow. Anyway, let's go and keep that on a more positive note. What time does Chicken go to sleep? About 2 in the morning. He's on our time, so he stays up with us and then goes to sleep at about 1 or 2, usually closer to 2, and then gets up about 11, 12 hours later. So he gets a good 12. No, leave the necklace alone. You're falling off. You're being a brat. Yeah, he loves the studio. This is like, he doesn't understand why I'm not bringing him over to the desk. That's where he really wants to go. Sierra said, my green cheek is trying to talk to your chicken. I bet my chicken wishes he could hear him. He loves listening to other birds. Chicken needs his own show. Will Elliott said, I'm with Bryson. I'm always on night duty and sneaking peeks between chaos and mayhem. Yeah, that I'm excited for the Sheldine live stream. We'll have fun with that. What brand are these pencils? These are the Caran Museum Aquarelle, whatever. I can't say. What? You want my hand? What do you want? Can I help you? Are you gonna talk? Say buck buck. Buck buck chicka bird. Talk. Buck buck chicka bird. Come on, talk. Buck buck chicka bird. It's one of his favorite things to say. Oh, he's just gonna balk. Buck 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 buck. Buck 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 buck. Yes, I taught my chicken to say balk. Let's see. Is there a fixative that can help non-light fast media like pencil, watercolor, more light fast? I don't necessarily have one that I recommend. I have one here I used to try with Inktense, and it worked okay. What? Are you big chicken? Is that what you're going to break out and do? You big chicken? Yeah? Big chicken? Big chicken. Come on, big chicken. Big chicken. Come on, do your wings. Big chicken. Big chicken. Big chicken. Big chicken. I can't put my arm up. He'll pull his wings up when I put mine up, but he can't. I don't have room with the camera. Anyway, back to non-light fast. Yeah, there are fixatives. Just read the directions, and always, no matter what you're going to spray a fixative on, always test it on whatever surface you're using, that type of paper and that type of medium. So if let's say I wanted to test it on this, I would test it on a scratch piece of this paper with these pencils to see if it behaved well, because sometimes some of those sprays just do not play nicely with other mediums. So even if the one that I used worked on Inktense, it might not work on this. Always test, but I don't have one that I'm attached to or anything like that. Have I tried the Faber-Castell watercolor pencils? Not yet, but I will. Crystal's Art said Chicken wants to steal the show. Will you do a watercolor pencil or watercolor drawing of him? Maybe. He's not super, although I could make him in rainbow colors, huh? He's not, I don't know. For me, with a watercolor, I love all the bright colors, and so with him, he seems more like a graphite type subject. But I would like, maybe I'll have reflections of other colors on him. I could, huh? Where are you going? What? What do you want? Stay up on my shoulder. Can I make him sing? So here's the thing about singing. I can't whistle, and so I can't get him started. And so what I would do, because I have the worst voice in the world, I can get him to start, but it's this guttural, not his real song. It's not right. Here, come here. Can you do this? Do 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 do. Come on. Do 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 do. Come on. Come on. You're not doing it. Do 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 do. Yeah, I have to do my fingers like this to get him going. He just wants to balk. I have no control over what he says or what he does when. He'll just break out into randomly doing whatever he's interested in. I wonder, actually, let's see if I can pull up that song on my phone of the actual whistling. Might get him going. Stay there. Let's see. Go YouTube. If you have a cockatiel, this is what I search for. Just type in cockatiel, and in this case, Game of Thrones. And there are videos that you can just play on repeat. Let's see, if I get it started, he might. It's not the part he likes. Here. Nope, hold on, there's a pause. Give him a second. Come on. Okay, this video sucks. It's got too long of a pause in between the repeat. That's actually not the part he likes. There's another one. See him cocking his head? He's like, ooh, I like it. You gonna sing? Well, he likes it, but I don't know if he's gonna do it. I don't think he's in that mood yet. You're not cooperating. Okay, Heidi said, when doing an acrylic painting, And then using oil paint to finish, what is your process? Do you put an isolation layer over the acrylic before starting with the oils? No, I don't. I go straight on the acrylics with oils. But my acrylics are also flat. I think if you're using a high gloss acrylic like the Liquitex Heavy Body, that may not give you the best results. I like using the Liquitex Basics. They're very flat, and so the oils stick to them really nicely. And then when I varnish, I just varnish with my Gamvar by Gamsol. Gamsol by Gamvar? Get that backwards. I think it's Gamvar. By Gamblin. Gamblin is the maker. Gamvar is the, yeah, Gamvar by Gamblin is the varnish that I use, and I put it over everything. Can I bring Nugget in someday? Not anytime soon. He's not my bird, and we want to really make sure he doesn't bond with me. I thought maybe eventually I'd be able to bring in a perch and let them both hang out on the same perch together, but Nugget likes to pick on Chicken, so I wouldn't really be able to make sure I could protect Chicken while they were sitting together. So probably no time soon. I don't know if in the future I'll want to do that. Heidi said, and to finish the piece off with UCL. Okay, so that I answered with the Gamvar. The supply list, if you ever wonder what supplies I use for things, I have the supply list over on my website. If you go to Lachri.com, there's a menu, a drop down for different supplies that I use that I go through. Most of everything I use is on there. Gamvar, yeah, thank you, Valerie. Gail said, I'm a chronic night owl too, 2:30 or 3 till noonish. My bird coincides well. Melissa said, sorry, I lost all memory on how to do things, painting and art. I'm starting over due to the stroke. The only thing I remember is keeping the palette wet for acrylic. So where should I start? Pick a subject and paint. That's all that you need to worry about. Enjoy the process. Something that you're interested in. Just pick something and start painting. There's no formula I would say you have to do. Anyone who's starting over, just pick something and I think the biggest thing is going to be your mindset going in. Give yourself permission to make an ugly mess. The same as somebody who is new starting with something. Don't go in it putting a bunch of pressure on yourself that everything needs to be as good as it was before the stroke. Don't look at it that way. Look at it as, I'm going to go into this, I'm going to make a million mistakes and not even worry about it. So have fun with it, I think is so important. You're going to do so much better and progress so much faster if you're not beating yourself up because you're not as good as you were before. So go in, make a mess, have fun. The more you paint, the faster, you'll get back to where you were. Crystal's Art said, can Chicken talk and say things like pretty bird or poor baby? Had a cockatiel do that. He says, bok bok chicken bird. He says, come on. He says, big chicken. What else do you say? What else do you say? I don't even remember. I don't remember. You bok bok chicken bird. Bok bok chicken bird. That's when I do the do-do-do, because I can't whistle. That's how I started doing that to try to get him started in whistling, and he does that instead now. So I'm like, wow, that you made me sound like a dying cat, which is not necessarily inaccurate, but it's not the song I was trying to get you to sing. Bryson said, I had one last question before I head out for the night. What is the difference between hot press and cold press? Good question. Hot press, very, very smooth. Cold press has more tooth. It's a rougher paper. So we are, let's see, at 10:10, so we'll go ahead and wrap up the live stream. Thank you guys so much for joining. I don't know what next week's going to be. Maybe we'll start, because I do know I want to start the comparison between these and the Derwents, but I probably won't do that for a live stream. I don't know what we're doing next week. That seems to be the usual thing here. But thank you so much for joining. And if you haven't already, make sure you're signed up for my email newsletter, because that's going to let you know when new things are coming up or what's coming, all of that, and update you with the live streams and all that fun stuff. But thanks again for joining. Make sure to check out our moderators channels, Valerie and Joseph Incham. They're both linked in the video description. They've got some really cool stuff over there. So make sure you check that out. And thank you so much for joining. And I will see you guys next week. Although I have a bunch of videos I have to go edit, so I guess I'll see you before then. Bye.